Welcome to a new episode of New Ways of Being. I'm Raymond Posh, and I have another fantastic conversation for you today that I'm looking forward to get into here momentarily. My guests are Brian Swimme and Monica DeRaspe-Bolles, and they are co-authors of a book that is called The Story of the Noosphere. And I'm going to let them tell us about that, and then we'll dive into a conversation. But Brian is very well known as a cosmologist and has written a number of books. Monica, I know uh, in the book cover is referred to as a philosopher. So I know that she's into philosophy and also into what's happening with the story of humanity these days as well as, and Brian is too. And that's, I presume, why they have chosen to collaborate on this book. And, but this all ties together to a book project that the three of us now are participating in. I'm kind of managing the project to create a new book that's about how we can change the world by raising human consciousness. And so that short highlight there is what we're going to keep coming back to in this conversation. Now, I do want to hear all about their new book, and I'm very aware of what is meant by the noosphere, and that's all about human consciousness, and draw some conclusions about how we might change the world from that perspective. So, Brian, welcome. Monica, welcome.
Thank you,
Uh,
Ray.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
how are both of you today?
Couldn't be better.
Lively.
Hopefully doing great. Yeah,
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 let's
we're doing great. Lively.
doing
Yeah. Feeling.
well. Well, why now here's what I normally do. I normally invite you to give a short story version of how you came to be what you're doing today in the world. And so, Brian, I'll invite you to go first. And yeah, tell us. I know you've written a bunch of different books, and I think many of them relate to cosmology. But I know you're a professor at the California Institute of Integral Studies, and I know you do other things as well. So give us the short version of your story.
yeah. Uh, what Monica and I created, this book on the noosphere. Uh, we believe by raising some awareness or consciousness around the noosphere, we will be entering to a new era of human history, an ontologically distinct era of human history. In the middle of the chaos, something magnificent is taking place, and that is the emergence of this mysterious reality called the noosphere. Monica, why don't you jump in and say, what is the noosphere? This isn't a word that is well known.
Well, I love that Raymond is focusing this on consciousness, because consciousness if we follow the story of consciousness back through time, we can see that the earth has been developing this layer by layer through more and more complex forms of intelligence. I like to think of the noosphere as a brain of brains, but this is a process that has been going on and deepening for more than 500,000,000 years. Earth has been building ever more complex brains. This is a long process of what Teilhard called cerebralization, in which consciousness itself is steadily deepening. And through
Maybe,
each,
Monica, you
yeah.
just mentioned Teilhard. Maybe take a moment and say who Teilhard is for those.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Well, you mentioned him, Raymond. Teilhard de Chardin, Jesuit priest and scientist, conceived the notion of the noosphere as well as Vernadsky back, um, I think, 1950,
No, 1924.
1924. He died in 1951. Okay, so 1924, he conceives this notion because he has this realization of the creative advance from the very beginning, that the universe is developing in time, um, and the universe is creative. So, in the noosphere, it becomes it, well. Should I go back to talking about the brain of
Yeah, no,
brains?
no, please. I just want to get the name
Okay,
Teilhard out there. Yeah, but the
so we
brain of
think about,
brains.
yeah.
But
So if we think,
one of the keys is that Teilhard really understood what was happening with human evolution. And so I assume that's really what you're tuned into, right, Monica?
yeah, so we're thinking it, but if we're focused here on consciousness per se, then we need to think of consciousness as a process that's been present throughout the history, if
Mhm.
not the whole universe, which I would say, it's aiming at consciousness along the way, but at least it's been a process that's deepening throughout Earth. So we get the first form of a brain in 500 million years ago, half a billion years, and it's a little creature that's in the ocean that looks a little like it's now extinct, but it looked like a scorpion. And through each new structure of neural connection, the planet itself, the Earth, has expanded its capacity to sense, to learn, to reflect. So those faint electrical patterns that was like a turning point. It's like a faint in the earliest one, the moment when matter begins to feel
Mhm.
is how we understand it. And so over time, the neural complexity grows, nerve cords become brains, reflex becomes perception. Creatures learn not only to react, but to anticipate, to imagine what might come next. And out of this widening field of awareness arose collective intelligences, coral reefs, ant colonies, beehives, networks of coordination that are greater than any single organism. Um, and then among the vertebrates, consciousness deepens again. Birds begin flocking, wolves are hunting in packs, fish are schooling. Each new coordination represents a higher order integration of perception and response. And, and with each new advance, Earth's capacity for cognition grows. Then comes humanity. The breakthrough is not simply an increase in neurons within an individual brain, but richer connections between many minds, many autonomous minds. That's the brain of brains. So, gathered around our campfires in the Paleolithic, we linked imagination with memory through language, art, and cooperation. As we're migrating across the whole surface of the planet, we expanded our capacity to think together, and consciousness entered a social planetary phase. And then in the Neolithic, as we settled into biomes around the Earth, intelligence expanded beyond the human into the living systems that are around us. Hunters learned to think with the herds that they followed, sensing the dynamics within the group and anticipating when movement's going to happen. So, like at the Great Bison jumps of North America, for example, humans participated in the herd's collective behavior as if they were merging their awareness with that of the animals until until an entire field of intention opens. they know that the bison are going to run off a cliff. They know, they can predict the behavior of the animals because they're shared cognition. And the same with it was like distributed cognition. So it's the same with farmers. They learn to think with seasons and with soil, and then they domesticate and cultivate, and we're projecting our intentions into the future, shaping the evolution of other species and within our own. You said that with human consciousness we can change the planet. We are doing that. We
Yes.
are changing the planet. So now, we get new, we moved into the classical period, and with that comes these new levels of reflection. The classical philosophers, like above all Pythagoras, he begins to discern this harmony and order in the fabric of existence itself. He discovers that the beauty of music arises from whole number ratios. And from that insight, he gets the intuition that the same mathematical relationships structure the whole cosmos. So now our consciousness has moved out into the order of the cosmos.
Mhm.
So consciousness has then begun to contemplate its own structure, mind recognizing that the deep correspondence between our thoughts and the order of reality. Now in the modern era, this cerebralization, it's reached a planetary scale. We've built instruments of thought that extend our senses across the globe and out into the cosmos. Telescopes, the vast digital web that connects us. These are not external machines. They are organs of a collective intelligence. I think now would be a great time for Brian to tell us about the James Webb Space Telescope.
And by the way, Monica, I'm sorry there. Thank you for that that explanation, because one of the, I kind of have the view that most people, if you talk about the subject of consciousness, have a very kind of vague, rough idea of consciousness, and just they barely understand that. Oh yeah, well, I've evolved consciousness, and I'm conscious in these different ways. It's just kind of a grade kind of thing for most people. But to hear the evolution of how consciousness in the world, in particular, of the earth, and Jude Currivan would say of Gaia, um, how that has developed so much and become so great. And, you're exactly right that it's something that fills the earth and all of human activity, and everything we do, and all of that reflects consciousness in certain way. And so when the question about consciousness in the world, certainly I would say, and many people would say today, well, it's not all for the good. We, haven't seemed to learn how to live in peace and unity, etc. So we can dive into some of that, and we will. But right now, let's kind of take a pause, and I want to make sure that both of you, say a little bit more about yourselves before we get into a full-blown conversation on the broader topic. Brian, yeah, you've been all involved in the evolution of the universe as well, from the perspective of a cosmologist. Yeah, say a few words about that, and how do you see the universe evolving and consciousness evolving at the universal level? Oops, you're on mute. There we
Oh,
go.
I was swearing right then, so I missed out on it. So you asked a great question. Consciousness is is so vast. So let me say something that's real and that gives a feel for how we are thinking, um, how Monica and I are thinking with our book.
Okay.
The form of consciousness of the modern period goes back in a very, very big way to Rene Descartes and his famous dualism, where he imagined humans are conscious, res cogitans, this idea of we have a awareness and consciousness, and nothing else in the universe does. And that he had this strange idea that animals were just machines, and they make sounds like they're suffering, but that's just a broken machine.
He
Now,
experimented on his wife's dog, by the way, just to insert. Go on, sorry.
well, yeah, and exactly what he did to the wife's dog, there's arguments about it, but he was
Really?
definitely, yeah, really, but he was definitely of the opinion that just humans are conscious. He had a funny method. He started off and thinking about his pets, and he said maybe they're conscious, and he sort of worked his way down the evolutionary ladder. And when he got to oysters, he was convinced that an oyster couldn't have a soul, couldn't be conscious. And so instead of just saying it started there, he ratcheted all the way back up to everything. But at any rate, it sounds, we can make fun of Descartes. I mean, I'm trying to right now. His idea that animals are mechanical,
Yes.
and so forth, and what a ridiculous point of view. But that's exactly what we've done. In the modern factory farms, it's unbelievable the way in which human beings can treat these sentient animals as if they're just nothing. It's just grotesque. So you see, when I think about transformation of consciousness, a number of qualities are in my mind. And one of them would be we're moving from this dualistic consciousness into an awareness that everything has an inner life, everything, every animal, every plant, and that the form of consciousness that we are entering, but now I mean a certain segment of planet Earth is now entering into an awareness that all of life is our family, our community, our relative, all of life, and that we are interdependent with them, and we have a deep sense of compassion. I mean, this is what one of the things that Monica and I were trying to do with our book. It is, it's important to be modest and so forth, but I just have to say that I think if people understand, can take in what we've written about in the story of the noosphere, we would, in that moment, enter into a new era of harmony and love and compassion. Now, I know it won't happen that fast, but I do want you to know how confident I am that the ideas in the story of the noosphere book are absolutely historic. And I'm not saying that they're our ideas. These ideas are the ideas of the noosphere, and we are recording it. Monica and I are like the scribes. The noosphere is letting us know where we're going. Oh, you're laughing at me. Then let's hear from you.
Cool.
No, I'm
Not you, Ray. I'm talking about Monica.
No, I'm loving what you had to say. That's good.
But you thought of something funny. I want to hear.
Oh,
I was just
I felt myself as a scribe, that this collective, the sense of being a part. And Ray, you spoke about this as well. You said that the thing that connected you to Brian's work, The Universe is a Green Dragon, was your sort of discovery of wholeness. We are part of a whole. So here I sit in the midst of all these incredible thinkers, my mentor, Brian, Teilhard, all, the lineage that I find myself in. And by spending the time with this and really allowing myself to come into relationship with these people, these ideas, and by spending my time in nature and spending my time with my grandchildren too, the relationships, I fall in love with the world, and then with the world around me. Love is this most mysterious energy in the cosmos, the affinity that unites things. And so you get more being out of that. I remain my autonomous self, but you get more being. And so yes, when Brian says that we're just scribes, all you're doing is describing the world that you're in, if that makes any sense at all. I feel like the noosphere takes love to a brand new place, and it brings you to like a capacity to care for the whole Earth community, because you see that you're part of the whole Earth community, and not just the Earth, the universe, and
Nice.
every expansion of the consciousness in history, from tribe to nation to species, has been an expansion of empathy.
Wow.
And now the noosphere is calling us to extend that care to the entire planet.
You talked about the noosphere being a brain of brains,
Oh, you want
but
me to go
what
on with
about
that?
what about? Pardon me.
Oh, sorry, no.
Well,
Yeah,
what about saying something about the noosphere and planetary intelligence, planetary consciousness, a planetary brain?
planetary brain. Well, I thought that maybe you would pick up on that, since you so you could pick up on that and tell
Okay,
us a story about the James Webb Space Telescope
okay,
in that
yeah,
deep way. That's what I was asking for.
okay,
For
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I was, yeah, I fell asleep. I'm sorry. I apologize. So, at any rate, yeah, this, okay. One of the challenges that Cartesian consciousness has is imagining that there are other minds, trying to imagine other beings with consciousness. So Descartes limited his view just to humans. And we live in that lineage. So what I'm trying to say is, when we talk about the interior world and mind, consciousness, experience, we talk about this. We need to take seriously the possibility that consciousness and within exists on all scales, and that's a radical statement, I know, but by thinking about something that seems almost ridiculous, if you think about it long enough, you will start to deconstruct the hold that Descartes and his view has on us. So let me give you an example. Well, you mentioned Jude Curvin. Her one of the things she has done is to celebrate the way in which the earth as a whole is alive, is intelligent. We know this whole idea of Gaia, and that's what we're trying to do with the noosphere. The noosphere is doing things, and this, because I was raised just like most people in the Western civilization. I was raised in modern forms of knowing. It took me a while to really get what the noosphere was, and one of the big moments came with the James Webb Space Telescope. So this could be called my spiritual breakthrough. So I think around the reality of the noosphere, all of us that are interested in the evolution of consciousness, all of us will have a moment when the noosphere comes alive and we get it. So let me just talk about mine. I'm not saying that you all, the people that are reading this book or listening to this video, I'm not saying you will have the same experience as myself. No, there's a billion different pathways into what we are calling noospheric consciousness. We're moving from Cartesian consciousness to noospheric consciousness. What is that? So the James Webb Space Telescope is the most advanced form of aeronautical technology we have. Incredible. Here's how it began. Isaac Newton, 1687, publishes his account of gravity. It blows everybody's mind. It's like nothing like this has ever occurred anywhere on the planet, like not in China or India, not in medieval Europe. Just Newton had this incredible breakthrough. And so the scientists of the time, studied it, analyzed it, extended it. And then another century and a half goes by, and Lagrange, a French mathematician, he discovers something bizarre, that there are 5, if you look at the sun and the earth and the moon, you look at that system, there are 5 places in that system where gravity cancels out. Mm-hmm. Whoa. What do you mean gravity cancels out? But 5 different places. And so in other words, if you're there, if you can get into that sequence of events, you just stay there forever. So that was Lagrange. So these Lagrangian points now they're called. So in the 20th century, we went there. So Lagrange wrote papers about it. Americans went there with their satellites. So the James Webb Space Telescope was going to plant a telescope in a very particular point, one of the Lagrangian points. And I can describe it this way. It is 1 million miles away from Earth on a direct line with the sun. Now, if you just bring that into your mind, you have the sun, you have the Earth, and you have the telescope 94 million miles from the sun. Now, as the Earth moves, this point moves. And so the satellite is there and going around the sun, always in the shadow of Earth. Now, why that's so fantastic is because there's no light pollution. We're able to see things of extremely, minor presence. We can capture them. So then you ask this question. Here's a simple question. Who built the James Webb Space Telescope? Who built it? What's interesting is that there isn't a single human, not a single human, who knows all of the knowledge necessary to construct the James Webb Space Telescope. Mm-hmm. Engineers from 14 different nations came together, and they pooled their knowledge in order to construct this. So you see right away, it's not some individual genius building this. It's the collective. It's the human collective. And then what do we have? We have on the spacecraft, we have lenses. These are eyes, EYES, they're eyes. And the eyes are told where to look by the technologists, the scientists on planet Earth. So by moving these eyes, by interpreting the data that the satellite is sending to us, we are in touch with 2 trillion galaxies. Now, who constructed that? The human collective. Who understands all that we've learned? No one human. The human collective does. So that whole system, the sun, the earth, the satellite, the humans, that whole system is what knows the universe in a new way. So then I just really got it. I mean, God, the noosphere, it gathers together knowledge from the past. It synergizes with other people. It's a being that's alive, and we participate in it. And I could go a little bit further and say, well, I told you about how essential the engineers are from these 14 different countries. Well, what about their teachers? They know. What about the farmers that had to? What about the government that had to be stable enough for this to take place? Very quickly, we start to move into the realization that it's the whole. We're talking about the whole. It's the whole that constructed this, that understands this, and now what we're saying in terms of your project, Ray. What we're saying is that as humans come together and awaken this collective intelligence, we are entering into an entirely new era. Just compare the knowledge of a human, the same kind of body we have, same brain. Go back 100,000 years. Compare the knowledge that guy has of the universe compared to what we have now. It's so many orders of magnitude greater. Now, what if we devoted the same kind of energy to figuring out how to create healthy humans around the planet? What about this if we put that same kind of energy to build the noosphere that could educate deeply all the people on the planet? That is the hope, you see, that we're celebrating in our book, The Story of the Noosphere. We're at the very beginning of like a fantastic transformation into a beautiful world that it's even hard to imagine how wonderful it's going to be.
Very good. Well, I want to talk more about that and explore, your perspectives. But I want to go back to something that one of you said, or maybe both of you said it together. Consciousness is everything. And I want to ask, are you familiar with a book called Awakening the Species? Conversations with God, book for Awaken the Species.
I'm not.
By
No.
Neil Donald Walsh. Well, he channels God and in his books. And in that particular book, it's very focused on the awakening of the human species, and awakening meaning reaching a certain level of awareness and living by that. But in the book, the really amazing thing that he said in there that really, for anyone I think who has read it, was taken back by, was that God said, consciousness is in everything, even the smallest particle in the universe is conscious. So I don't know what your take on that is, but
I'll tell you right away.
Oh.
That so the lineage, we're talking about our book, The Story of the Noosphere, and like I said, the noosphere is responsible for its existence, and inside we can talk about the lineage of thinkers that have led to it. The primary thinker is, we've already mentioned, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and his view, very simply, is that the universe is a psychic physical reality. Psychic physical reality from the beginning. And so in his point of view, that every atom, every rock, every tree has a within. That was his word. Wasn't his only word, but it's one of his favorite words. There is a within. Mm-hmm. And then here's his philosophy in a phrase. The universe over billions of years is deepening its complexity. And every deepening of complexity is simultaneously an intensification of consciousness. The universe is becoming ever more complex, ever more conscious. Monica, do you want to jump in there? I mean, I know I did a brilliant,
You did a
interpretation.
perfect
I mean,
job
it can't be
yeah.
added to now, but
Yeah, I can't really add to that. He spoke of consciousness and the physicality of the universe as being two aspects of the same unity. So everything that we're speaking about in our book, and we're not dualists in any sense. And in fact, I love that you use the word consciousness and that you're asking about consciousness, but sometimes even using that word, it assumes or has that as its starting point, the fact that this is not um, that there's something that's not conscious. To speak of consciousness and to think of it as being something that's just animals or humans. I mean, even to use the word. Um, so that's why I like the word cerebralization. And that's another Teilhardian word, that over time, it almost seems as if the universe has an aim for increasing cerebralization.
and I just
Yes.
let me add on just for anybody that's interested. So we focused on Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Another thinker we focus on is Alfred North Whitehead, who also believes everything has a conscious dimension. Henri Bergson is another one, and coming out of Asia is Sri Aurobindo. All of these fabulous thinkers take for granted the idea that consciousness characterizes everything,
Yes.
as well as physicality, both.
When Brian
Yes.
speaks about the James Webb Space Telescope, you can think of that as the extended consciousness of humanity, and the physical aspect is like the hyperbody. It's a beast. It's our body here has hands that's guiding the scope and shining the mirrors. We participated on it. We bent the metal. But the telescope itself is a tool that extends physically. It extends our physical body, and we didn't even have to grow. We didn't have to wait around for evolution to allow us to grow eyes that would go a million miles. Our eyes didn't have to become long and pointed, so we could actually see there. So it's a hyper body, but it's also a hyper mind. Two aspects of the same reality. The noosphere is a hyper mind, hyper body. It's got both a mind and a body aspect, but that just we're an extended matrix.
Yes.
Of,
Yes. It is quite amazing. Brian, when you were kind of talking through that, the one other aspect that as you talked about how over time consciousness has grown, and not just our physical bodies have evolved from simplicity to complexity, but certainly our consciousness has as well. And I really gather from we can say together that consciousness of the universe has evolved, and evolution is key. I mean, that's what allows that whole process to happen. It's evolution. So, and Jude Curvin spells out that the universe is now becoming to be understood as having unity, consciousness, and evolution as maybe the three defining aspects, and it all evolves together.
Yeah, all together. Yeah,
Yes.
Monica.
And so what I want to come to, before we get anywhere close to running out of time, is in your book, you said that, and I've heard much of what you've described as coming from a scientific point of view. But I think you've said something to the effect that we can change humanity's the way humanity exists and behaves and evolves into the future. So we can
Yeah.
start talking about conscious evolution.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about conscious evolution. How do we, or how does the noosphere, guide its own evolution of consciousness at this point, or the of humanity's consciousness?
I have a response. But Monica, would you like to go first?
If you'd like to go first, you can. I could go. I kind of wanted no, go ahead and go first, and then you can cut all this. But no, never mind. I could do it.
You could go
I'm
first.
sorry, I can't.
It's
I
up
mean,
to
we're
you.
talking.
It's up to you.
Um,
You can go first or second, but you can't go both first and second. Or neither. You can't do neither first. What do you want to do?
I'm sure you two had a really fantastic working relationship in the book that you've written. Story.
Yeah,
we
did.
did. We did for a lot of years. It took us a lot of years
Wow.
doing this thing every day. Yeah. I mean, I think when we're talking about raising consciousness, we're talking about expanding the field of relationship.
Mhm.
And kind of what you just said, consciousness becoming aware of itself as one interconnected whole. So Teilhard de Chardin, again, said that love is the most universal, most mysterious energy in the cosmos, the affinity that unites. And if in the noosphere, we see love taking a new form, the capacity to care for the whole Earth community.
Right.
Every expansion of consciousness in history, as we move from tribe to nation to species, has been an expansion of empathy. Now the noosphere calls us to extend it the whole planet. If the noosphere is the Earth awakening to itself, then love is the pulse of that awakening. As we go on, our circle of concern widens. So, we're now maybe I know what you could do, Brian. You could talk about the chimpanzees.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, yes, do it. Okay, well,
Are you done?
I mean, I can come back. I can come back to
Okay, good. Okay, good. I'll jump in. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, Ray is going to love this. All right. So it's the idea of, we have this, is consciousness evolving? And if so, how is it happening? And so here's my story, Ray. And this part is purely scientific. If you just imagine you're at a professional football game or a concert by a famous musician. Anyway, you got 70,000 people, and they all are having a good time, rooting for a team, whatever. But if you replaced every one of those humans with a chimpanzee, they would all slaughter each other. I mean, this is something we've learned, and the chimpanzee mind can't handle that many other organisms, other chimps around. Now, the amazing thing is that when humans first began to appear on the scene, something like 6 million years ago, the humans had a mind that was just basically identical to a chimpanzee mind. So over the last 6 million years, the human has been evolving its consciousness and its mind all that time. So we learned it. So for a long time, we lived in troops of a couple dozen, just like chimpanzees, because that's what we knew, and that's. But we learned how to live together in villages with several thousand. That I just want to impress upon us and the whole world. That was a massive creative achievement. And then we went from villages with several thousand to cities with millions. Again, an incredible achievement. And now here we are. We now live in these nation states of 50 million, a billion people, and we're shuddering with the difficulty of taking the next step. But we will. And here's the part I thought you'd especially like. The noosphere has been doing this all along. And in a variety of ways, the noosphere has been making this happen. And one of the most wonderful ways the noosphere has been doing this is through trade. Because by developing trade, we need to understand what the desires are of the others. And when we do that, we're beginning to experience the universe and Earth from their perspective. That's the power of the human mind. It's incredible. And then as the population grows and we have more and more of this trade, we understand the way in which we're so similar, and we find ways to satisfy the desire of others. And so we have this growing, complex community with a different consciousness than that early human did 6 million years ago. So I mean, I just love the way. Yeah, Monica.
Sorry, trade is even like the second law of thermodynamics, where energy disperses. But in this case, as it disperses, it creates these centers that then they're centers of development, because people have access to more things.
Tell the story of obsidian. That's such a great example.
Okay, well, can we come back to that in a second? I can do the story of obsidian.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. You have more to say. Go ahead.
Well, you can say something while I get my story of, yeah.
Well, at any rate, so Ray, I'm just trying to celebrate. I mean, we're in this year right now, and then we're seeing all sorts of chaos take place. It's because we're moving to another era, and it's painful to leave what we're so comfortable with. But humans aren't evil. They're just, we struggle. We find a way to accept change and to evolve. But it isn't a simple process, and it involves harmony and chaos both. So I mean, this is the great hope of the noosphere. Whoa, Monica, you had it.
Obsidian is is a good story for seeing the way in which, obsidian
Yeah.
is to actually think about what's happening there is actually a good way to see that this story deepens not just in humans, but also it's the forces that we're talking about are cosmic forces. They're biological forces, they're geological forces, and that we've gone through these transitions. The universe goes through these transitions, each time preserving this dynamic. So if we can even think of trade as being like a circulatory system of the noosphere, where isolated communities are pulsing with connection. And so all our materials are moving between people. So in Neolithic Mexico, you have obsidian because it has to be where volcanoes are. So it's just one place where it is. And everybody wanted obsidian, but it's only near the volcanoes. So the communities far from it had to either raid for it and kill, or they could figure out ways to exchange for it. So they choose to exchange, and they learn one another's desires, like Brian is talking about. And if you step back from altitude, looking at how it's similar to the second law of thermodynamics, you it, we see this we see that stored energy, like stored in the form of obsidian, tends to disperse, and in that dispersal, new order arises. So what happens in the second law? So obsidian disperses, communities can use it in new ways, everybody's happy, and development occurs. You can also see that the sun is it radiates in all directions, but some of it lands on Earth, and we think of the sun's bestowal of energy as being a great exemplar of sacrifice. It's giving over its life, in a sense, to the future, because it's going to burn up someday, but in its light that's radiating, when it touches Earth, cyanobacteria can learn to use it for photosynthesis and all the photosynthesis development. So development happens, you know, and we can think of the predator prey relationship as being like this too, because in the tension of opposition, species refine one another. The mouse develops quicker senses, the hawk more it gets a sharper sight, and out of that, on the species level, we get a rise in abilities and awareness. So that's exactly how we understand trade. Difference in desire generating refinement, empathy, and increased consciousness, intelligence. So potential energy becomes creative energy, and the system as a whole becomes more complex and alive.
Mhm.
Yeah. We
Okay.
talk about these kinds of things in our book.
All right. Um, so let me throw something at you here then. Um, and I think we could spend more time talking about conscious evolution as well. So I want to come back to that too. In, the perspective that I speak from quite a bit is a level of consciousness for humans right now is still very based in the belief of separation. And humans haven't yet evolved a good understanding, a good consciousness of unity, of how we all just not can work together, but can evolve and live together in many, many ways. So I talk about, I would like to see a growth, an evolution of consciousness, human consciousness, from separation and fear that comes out of separation to unity and love. And I agree with you 100%. Love is a power in the universe that expresses unity. So how do can you agree with that in any way? And how would you see it happening, evolving to happen?
Raising consciousness is not is not an interior individual act. It's a collective one. The noosphere is collective, and every time we choose to care about anything, to learn about anything, to think or act, we're strengthening the connective tissue of that whole. Um, we are not individuals. What the world is made up of is relationships. Every time we see another being as part of ourselves, the reflective dimension of the Earth's evolution becomes more integrated, more capable of discernment, newer kinds of discernment. Um,
And here
Okay.
I give a way to experience it directly that people might want to try this at home at night. You you go out, you go outside and look up at the stars, and you reflect on the fact that stars just like what we're looking at, created each of the elements of our body, the calcium, the oxygen, nitrogen, and then the stars blew up and they all gathered together again and formed solar systems and planets and us. And so when we're looking at a star, we think it's out there, it's way out there. And then we, just by taking in what we've learned, we realize we're looking at a process that led to our awareness of the stars. Wow. Something outside developed into our inside. We are so profound. We're like a hand in a glove, a snug little. We just fit in here so profoundly. And then this can be done too, in a face-to-face with another person. You know, like say your partner. You're looking at one another, and you have the awareness that 4.5 billion years ago, every atom of your body was mingled together with every atom of your partner's body. You were all part of the molten earth. And now you've risen up, and so that you are, in this sense, a 4.5 billion year process. Both of you are, and you now arrived at this conscious awareness of the wholeness that is holding you.
Not only that, but when you look face to face with another, you're looking at that right then and there, that which is becoming you. You're becoming one another, because in the relational ontology of how the universe advances, you are coming more into contact with one another. And to me, the realization of that, when you're looking at someone, you're looking at a star, that dissolves all cynicism. It shows that your consciousness is not a private possession. It's planetary, it's cosmic, and we are the way that the universe sees and feels and imagines itself. So if yesterday when we were doing a different podcast, somebody said, Brian talked about the star, that when you look at a child, you're looking at stardust. And they asked, how can wonder help in a world that's suffering? How can you tell someone who's struggling to feed her child to go out and look at the stars? But awe is not a luxury. It's a way of seeing that restores the meaning. In the first place, when you look at a child, any child, you're looking at stardust that learned to hope. The atoms that are forged in the ancient star have become the eyes that look back and can love. That recognition that the child is the star transforms despair into participation. It reminds us that the universe is not something happening to us. It is something happening through us.
Yes.
The stars are looking back through our eyes. And when we see in that way, even the smallest act of care becomes huge cosmic significance.
Very good. I love that you brought up the word awe, because to me can be an important word. I have a huge tall pine tree outside of my office here, and especially if I can be outside and look at it, I can be in total awe that exists. And
Nice.
And that's very powerful. And awe is a very high state of consciousness. It involves a level of awareness that gives you that appreciation. So, I think what you're saying is quite important. My For the people, you've probably heard this, that there are quite a few people that say humanity's at a tipping point. Will we evolve in time to save the human race, to save civilization? Because people can see that systems are failing and that kind of thing. Now, Robert Atkinson, who you probably know, he talks about evolution happens through process. And so a part of real developed evolution requires chaos. The chaos is a part. He calls it muddling. It's muddling in the middle of the process. Chaos, represents that we're reaching the limits of our current way of being and putting stress on it. And so the question for the tipping point is, can humanity help move us past this tipping point to future growth? Because some people say, no, we can't. Technology is out of control. It's growing too fast. One person I asked to participate in the book declined because he said, we're not going to make it. And so what do you think about the tipping point?
I love that. The so the polarity is pessimism and optimism, pessimism and optimism, and our book is very optimistic. I mean, there's going to be suffering forever. This is a universe that has violence and suffering as part of it, but we see, with using the noosphere as a lens, we see a movement into a beautiful era, just a fantastic era. Let me tell you one little thing here. This is great. I forget where I first read this, but the writer was talking about optimism and pessimism, and then whoever it was came up with a phrase that I just love. History is made by the optimists. Isn't that great? And there's that experience you had when you asked the person to be part of this. Perfect example. A pessimistic person is just going, well, I'm just going to pull back and watch TV, So that person is not going to be part of this book, which is going to create part of history. I love that.
That's good. I like it too, and I like to take the optimistic view. And I do see a reality of the kind of process that we're going through, and and I'm taking the stance. I want to. I'm. Some people talk about being Gaians, that
Yeah.
we're a part of Gaia. And
Yeah.
maybe some people can see that more clearly than just saying we're human beings. But and if so, how can I participate in Gaia or the noosphere to help it survive and grow?
Yeah, and you're doing
Your
it, Ray. You're doing it,
your
Monica.
your friend, he's stuck in the mud. I've heard it, or the one who didn't want to participate. He's getting stuck in the mud. I've heard it called stuck in the jelly. Um, you can only think of the single cell organisms that, I don't know exactly all the details of this, but there's just like everything's fire, and there's way too much oxygen, and they can't figure it out. They're all dying, and then someone figures out how to actually eat the oxygen, how to use the oxygen, and from that we get um, a whole new level of evolution. And from that level of evolution comes the diversification of life, and all that anaerobic bacteria is still stuck in the mud.
Yeah, right. Well,
So
what I hear from both of you is that you would. I think I have had the exact same conversation with Jude Curva. That if I did, I think she would agree 100% that the universe is evolving and there is an intelligence or a guiding force that is within that evolutionary process that survives and that it continues to evolve to greater and greater extent over long periods of time, and that process, yes, may have stages in which it appears to be a reversal, but overall it progresses. And so
Yeah.
I hear you saying much the
Yeah.
same thing.
I mean,
Um,
even the expansion rate of the universe is a certain expansion rate that arrives here, with humans reflecting back on what the expansion rate is. There seems to be these critical thresholds that we pass through along the way. Like when everybody leaves Africa and they go in all different directions, even though they have no contact with one another, every single human group passes through a series of transformations. They all develop in similar ways. They they develop independent writing systems, even though they're not in contact with one another. So it's almost as if something deeper than accident is happening with the development. And we can't see it when you're in it, but there's every reason to think from these kinds of Goldilocks fine tuning of everything. And complexity science gives us a lens for this, basins of attraction, where in dynamical systems, the geometry of possibility draws processes towards certain configurations so that an acorn may you know, wander about, but it's going to be an oak tree because there's an oak as its trajectory. And that's what human populations are like as we move through these thresholds. And that gives us hope as well. It's like the question becomes whether we're going to be part of it. You know, we have we
yeah.
have to participate in this consciously. And
We,
our old metaphors are failing us.
yeah, one possibility is we could be replaced by more conscious beings later. But um, so I want to probably try to bring this to a close here now. We're starting to get long. One word has come up in my mind over and over again, especially when it comes to a discussion like a tipping point. That word is awareness. I think awareness is key, and I've heard, I think both of you mentioned the word and used the word. Um, I don't know that I have a really strong grasp on how awareness evolves in the universe or to the universe or to Gaia. But I really feel like it's a very key thing because how quickly humanity would become more aware, self-aware, and whole aware, WHOLE, um, might indicate how smoothly we will pass through this evolutionary process. Do you agree? And whoever wants to go first.
Monica.
Monica, I'll let you go first.
I feel like the whole noosphere is the universe becoming more self-aware of
Mhm.
itself. I feel like and the universe is the whole. So, as we learn that we're developing in time, that the universe is not just a cosmos, it's not a static place. We're not just placed here, but that we are the developmental universe. We are the universe, and not only that, but all of existence is a different mode of the universe universing. As we realize that, and we can see the wholeness in others, everything gets the dignity of a 13.8 billion year creation. Everything gets the dignity of wholeness from a different perspective. That's what the noosphere is. That's what our collective mind combined with, uh, uh, especially as the knowledge of a time developing universe makes its way into all of our institutions. They all need to be reinvented. And we need to understand what's real, our relationships, and that we are a collective. Humans may not end up being part of all that in the end. The universe will go on,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and just being part of that whole right now is amazing enough. I'm going to die. Everything that is passes, but we're part of the whole, even in our part. We get to be part of the whole while we're here. That takes away the fear of death.
And I believe the one consciousness of the universe is effectively, I don't know if totally, but effectively eternal. So, but uh, let me
Were you going to answer that, Brian?
give you a
Oh,
chance,
I
Brian.
couldn't.
Yeah.
Monica, you nailed it. It was great. Yeah, couldn't say it being better.
You agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
I love the expression you just said there about Monica about the universing. That's great. It's a good expression because it is a jump for people to really begin to understand the noosphere. And even the idea of Gaia. Of course it's outright rejected by many, many materialists and scientists. But the one
They're
I,
stuck in the mud.
I see one thing happening since I started this book project that I didn't see as clearly before. There are many, many, many more organizations that are, talking about this kind of thing, that they coming to understand the wholeness of the universe or humanity or groups of humanity, understanding unity, understanding conscious evolution. There are far more people that are really actively concerned about it than I would have guessed before I started this project. And I see that as not only a good sign, but it's probably a clear indication of what is happening with the noosphere as well.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
all the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
All right. Well, this has been an incredible conversation, and we've covered so much territory, and heard so many things that you talk about in your book. But any final words before we close?
Well, just to affirm your work, Ray, you're drawing together different perspectives, and that deepens our awareness of the whole that envelops all these different perspectives. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
I agree.
All right.
I concur.
We've had Brian Swimme and Monica DeRaspe-Bolles here with us today. They have an incredible book that I want to read but hadn't had the opportunity yet, The Story of the Noosphere. And it really, I'm hearing that the intention that was wanted to be communicated in the book is that you see that the noosphere is evolving, and it holds the full promise that it could change everything on Earth, and it will change everything on Earth. It's a matter of how much time. So, any anything else? Go get their book.
It'll change your life.
Good. Yeah, I saw some great reviews. Well, thank you both for being here. This has been incredible. I've learned so much from you. I have a whole bigger perspective now than I did before. I had some understanding of noosphere, but I think I'm getting a much deeper one, and I want to read that book. So thank you again.
All right. All right,
Thank
Ray.
you so much, Ray.